Invest Africa, proudly brought to you by KPMG.
Hello and welcome. This is Invest Africa and I'm your host, Nozi Pombanjwa, and thank you for joining me. It's a mantra many multinational companies and brands chant: think global, act local. This thinking is behind the concept of glocalization. Might sound strange if you've never heard it before, but it's a concept that was conceived some 30 years ago. You even find the word glocal in the Oxford English Dictionary today. And it's no longer just a concept. It's a fully fledged practice by many multinationals. And as the African consumer market grows, it becomes increasingly important for those wanting to do business on the continent. So what does Glocal mean for investing in Africa? Let's take a look.
Glocalization is any company that's acting outside of a particular market, moving into that market and tailoring their products to suit the needs of that particular region or market.
The first wave of glocalization saw global products flood emerging markets. Mega brands like McDonald's started adopting local strategies to sell its American hamburger, adapting them to the local tastes. African companies are also following the trend. Brands like Nando's and Boss Iced Tea are venturing into global markets.
Today, what I think you see is African brands are actually starting to think about tailoring their products to their local market and are now understanding how they can export that globally.
But there's also a converse trend emerging: for Africa, by Africa.
Consumers in Africa, obviously the continent is rising, so they're renouncing, trying to emulate what's going on in the West or America, and they're starting to have this pride, which is about being African. And that can be anything as narrow as being from Johannesburg to Pan-Africanism. And a lot of brands are tapping into this, especially domestic brands. They are seeing that they can actually take these things and flaunt them, flaunt national pride, actually embed these ideas in their product, and these products will sell.
With the slowing global economy, Africa's growing consumer market is becoming increasingly attractive.
There's a global shift, right, economically. So what you have in the West, I've come from the UK, London, people are still trying to get out of this slump, this economical slump. There's a lot of negativity going on. The recession has really held back these Western markets. And then on the other hand, you have places like China, which are have risen catastrophically, and the BRIC economies. And then you have this final frontier, which is Africa as a continent. I know it's not a country. And Africa is rising, it goes without saying. And this is rippling through the continent. There's optimism, people are excited, entrepreneurialism is at an all-time high. People are actually taking power into their own hands and doing things.
While Africa needs the foreign direct investment of global brands to grow, sustainable development is now a key factor.
There's an ethical or sustainable direction where it implies that if you are making something in Africa, you are definitely going to be using local resources, you're going to be employing local staff, and you're going to be empowering the people that you're providing these products for. And that in itself is a win-win again. There's a lot of multinational brands have got it wrong in the past. They've come in and they've maltreated the continent, and they've not thought about it. But as I say, with Africa rising and people taking more pride in their environment, in their communities, they're not going to buy into brands that don't treat their communities with respect.
Now joining me on tonight's discussion panel from Lagos, we have Ugo Kheri Robert, the Managing Director of Millward Brown Nigeria, as well as Marie-Therese Fido. She's an Associate Director at KPMG in Nigeria. And with me here in Johannesburg is Tebe Kalafeng, the founder and chairman of Brand Africa. Now for you at home, we'd like you to join in the conversation by using Twitter and following me at Nozi Pombanjwa or at CNBC Africa. And don't forget that our hashtag is Invest Africa. Let's get right into it. And Tebe, let me start off with posing the biggest question, that is, how significant is glocalization for the African investment landscape?
Well, I was actually going to disagree with that whole idea, because I do not think that African companies should be glocalizing. I think they shouldn't be thinking global and going local. I think they should be thinking local and going global. Because what they need to take into the world are ideas which are conceived and embody the spirit of Africa. Because when the French companies come bring their products to Africa, we buy them for their French essence. When American brands come to Africa, we buy them for the American essence. When we take brands from Africa, we should take the African essence to the world.
Ugo, I'd like you to maybe rebut some of what Thebe is putting out there. He's completely tossed the concept of glocalization for the African market out the window. Do you agree that this is not relevant for African players and that they should be really looking to stay African and not looking at a glocalization strategy?
Well, I think glocalization, I think, is real. And I don't think African companies should stay local because, let's face it, the African companies, they're already facing so much stiff competition in their terrain. So when we talk glocalization, I think that the African companies, they should do all they can to also face the stiff competition that is already in their terrain. So I think that it is real and it has come to stay.
Well, I'm not saying they should not go over, international.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that the mindsets they should have when they go out of the continent is the mindset of taking the essence of Africa with them.
Marie-Therese, I'm going to allow you to be the referee in this one. Thebes just snuck in a quick rebuttal there. But where do you stand, Marie-Therese? Should African companies be adopting a glocalization strategy as they expand outside of their borders?
I strongly believe that African companies should take the essence of Africa to the global market. However, everything that they should do should be of world-class standards. So nothing should be compromised. Quality, the usage, durability. One thing we tend to do from an African point of view is that we haven't gotten to the level where our products are the right quality. So yes, I agree with the concept of glocalization. However, everything we do should be of world-class standards. There should be no compromise on what we should be taking out. So because sometimes people say local, and then they don't spend a lot of time on the requirements of ensuring that what they are sending out is of the right quality, which is also the concept of what was brought to us when global brands came into Africa initially. They were not focused on the quality, and they then found out that Africans are very brand and quality conscious. So if we have to take our own products outside of our continent, we also have to ensure that we meet the tastes and the requirements of the markets that we are going into.
Marie-Therese, let me throw that question to Ugo. And Ugo, let me ask you whether African brands, original African brands, have stepped up to the task to meet that quality benchmark that Marie-Therese speaks of.
Well, I would say a few case in point have met the standard quality. And I will name the likes of the Dangote Group and the MTN Group, who have done so well in their local terrain and are also expanding into other African countries. And I think if they continue this way, because already they are carrying the quality standards, and if they continue this way, I believe that they will also go into the other markets
but Thebe,
besides Africa.
Let me take this and throw it to Thebe. I mean, MTN, Dangote, big names, big companies, big market capitalization. But this is a very small part of the broader economic activity that happens on the African continent. How do we then get African players, whether it be industrialists, to step up to that quality mark and saying what is African is also qualitative? Do we have that brand alignment?
Oh, indeed we have. I mean, you look at even B2B brands like Sasol, which is investing, I think, $25 billion in the US, which is the biggest FDI ever in the history of America, by an international company that just happens to be a South African company. They are taking that quality to the world. If you look at Nando's, they are taking that quality to the world. If you look at SAB Miller and the brands they've taken to the world, South Africans have always, for example, in Africa, certainly in South Africa has always led at that quality standard. If you look at the Brand Africa 100 list of the most valuable brands survey that we did, South Africa, 72% of the most valuable brands are South African, 26% are Nigerian, and 2% are Kenyan. Those three countries are responsible for some of the greatest and most successful brands that we're seeing in the world. Certainly, if you look from a Kenya perspective, you look at what they've done with M-Pesa. M-Pesa now is the global standard that Vodafone uses around the world because it is conceived and made in Africa.
Marie-Therese, let's come back and let's put the Africa strategy on your doorstep. As many African countries expand outside of their borders, we've seen successes from Dangote, from MTN, which have been noted today. But how should companies be thinking about their expansion strategies? Are there any particular key points that you think are absolutely fundamental if that strategy is to work in a foreign market?
Well, one thing that they must look for is the right market, because there's no point in going somewhere where you don't have a market for it. So you have to look at the right market. You also have to think about something as simple as sustainability. Fair trade is one of the things that is a buzzword today. A lot of people are saying, how these products you are bringing to me, how sustainable is it? Under what sustainability conditions did you get them done? So, and then your strategy has to be right. Your financing has to be right. You have to ensure that you have the right financing. You also have to ensure that you have the right packaging. Because, for example, I'll come back to Africa. You take the many global brands, when they came into Africa, they decided to go into making smaller packages. How are the packaging received in the countries that you are going to? What kind of marketing are you going to do? What kind of online strategy are you going to do? So there's so much that you need to do from a strategy point of view, from a distribution point of view, from a point of sale point of view, from even understanding the products that you're going to sell to the people that you are going to use in delivering the product. So it's a complete mix of how you take these products to the global market.
It certainly sounds it certainly sounds, Marie-Therese, like understanding the market that is on your radar is a key factor in making sure that your glocalization strategy, if you employ one, works. But what we're going to do is take a quick break for now. When we come back, more on going global and perhaps also touching on a very significant point that's been raised, and that's of sustainability in the glocalization strategy here in Africa. We'll see you right after the break. Welcome back. You're still watching Invest Africa. Tonight, we're looking at the interesting concept of going global and the investment potential in it. Remember that we do value your suggestions and your feedback, so send us an email. That's to investafrica@abn360.com, or talk to us on Twitter, following me at Nozi Pumbandra or at CNBC Africa. And don't forget that our hashtag is Invest Africa. Still with me, my guests, joining us from Lagos, Ugo Jerry Robert, the MD of Millward Brown, Nigeria, Marie-Therese Fido. She's an Associate Director at KPMG Nigeria. And here in Johannesburg, I'm joined by Tebe Ikalafeng, the founder and chairman of Brand Africa. Now, before we went to break, we touched on the issue of sustainable development, especially when it comes to MNCs and other players on the African landscape. So, Tebe, I want to take you up on this. Does it really matter for the African consumer where the brands that they consume are coming from and how they land on their table?
Indeed, because much more what's important is that man has to live in harmony with the earth. You see, the world can live without us, but we cannot live without the earth. So it's important to have sustainable practices when you are building your brands, because otherwise we have no future customers.
Ugo, has sustainability gone beyond social responsibility? Because for a large extent, we've seen global companies in Africa taking up peripheral social responsibility projects. How are we seeing sustainability becoming an ingrained part of the broader business strategy?
Well, talking about sustainability, when it comes to glocalization. I would say for now, most African companies, they just look at the short-term investment, because all they are doing now is just carrying the product across the borders without knowing the consumers that they're going to. It's all about sales. There's nothing about marketing. There's nothing about branding. And where you do not understand the people, you're ultimately going to fail. And so I would say for now, it is not working. And tied with that is no social responsibility on their part, because when they carry this product across the border, they are not respecting the laws of the land. There's no investment in terms of building talent. There's no investment in terms of returning to the land where they're just carrying the product. So I would say there's really no sustainability for now. It's all about short-term investment. And that is not going to take the African companies anywhere. Yeah.
Marie-Therese, if sustainability is such an important component of brand equity, what are we getting wrong? Why is it that we have the picture that Ugo has just painted?
I don't think I agree with Ugo's assertion that sustainability is not being done. I don't think one would sweep all companies under the same umbrella. She mentioned Dangote and she mentioned MTN. And I'm aware that Dangote is doing a lot in the sustainability area. Everywhere they go, they ensure that the communities in which they are working in, to a large extent, they ensure that they give the people the right treatment, they work on the earth properly. And the same with MTN. MTN has a foundation here in Nigeria. And take other companies that operate here from a Nigerian perspective. Yes, I do know that some companies have been bitten by the bug of lack of sustainability. But I believe that some of these companies are also putting the environments in which they work at the forefront and are trying to ensure that they do the right thing. You go to Tulo in Ghana, they have scholarships. A lot of oil firms have scholarships in building talent. They're looking at their environments and they're saying, what talent do we need? What kind of people do we need to ensure that when we leave, how do we build local content? Some of them are looking at it. They may not be doing it as well as they should. Yeah. But I think something is being done.
Let me just quickly let Tebe respond to this one, and then we'll come back to Ugo, because I know that Ugo wants to get her word in after Marie-Therese's comment there. So a very quick one from you, Tebe.
I'll say that I think it's an excellent point that you just made in terms of sustainability. Yes, is broader. To me, I always bring it in terms of the harmonization between what you do and where you do it. And I think the important point that she makes, if you look at the likes of ShopRite, for example, versus Woolworths. Woolworths has not had as many successes particularly in Nigeria and many other countries, particularly because of the problem that ShopRite has noticed. And ShopRite said it recently, and they said what we are trying to do is we're trying to ensure that even when we source goods, when we source products and services, we source them from the local market. But we are taking we bring the ShopRite experience to them and the local goods that speak to the taste of the people that we're serving. To me, that's part of sustainability.
But how important is sustainability in brand equity? Does it have enough weight?
Well, it's got all the weight, because sustainability means just what it means. Because if you are not going to have sustainable business practices or sustainable investment, then your business is not going to be sustained.
Ugo, let me give you that opportunity to come in and maybe have the final word on this part of sustainability.
Okay, I was just going to add that I wasn't sweeping all companies under the same carpet. All I was going to say is that, I mean, counting the likes of ShopRite and all the companies I have mentioned, that is barely enough. It is not even up to 1% of the African companies. So I still maintain that we haven't started.
And it certainly seems that there's still lots to be done, irrespective. Marie-Therese, let me come to you with this issue of finding talent to sustain and take forward your glocalization strategy? How do we get Africans within the continent to get fired up and excited about intra-Africa trade and glocalization broadly, in terms of being able to move across borders to take up professional opportunities in other parts of Africa?
One, I think a lot of the immigration rules have to be a bit relaxed, especially for difficult to get talent. The war of talent is a major issue for many organizations today. Everywhere you go, everybody says talent is one of my stay awake issues. I'm not getting the right talent. Sometimes the right talent is not coming out of the universities, or sometimes the right talent, people are not studying the right courses. So I get people, then I have to train them again. So a lot of organizations have this problem. A lot of organizations also have the problem of having to import talent, which can sometimes be expensive. So it's important that countries relax some of these immigration rules and allow, just like they have allowed the movement of free trade, when you look at a COMESA or an ECOWAS type arrangement, there should also be that kind of arrangement from a large perspective in the area of free movement of talent. You want somebody to come to, let's take for example, you say Kenya. I'm not very sure about how long it takes, but I know that in many African countries, before your talent can settle down, it takes a lot of time, sometimes 2, 3, 4, 5 months, 6 months to get the right papers to get people to work. So I think that's one area that the governments within the region need to look at.
Tebe, she's spoken and outlined the large-scale regulatory issues, but are African brands doing enough to get Africans fired up about wanting to bring their skills to the table? If you put a Coca-Cola versus any other African brand, let's say Safaricom, which is also still a big player, what is the likelihood that African talent will gravitate towards African brands?
Well, the other important point I wanted to make related to that is not only do you have to relax immigration, but I think the fundamental is you have to revise the education system, because we need to create a type of education in Africa, and world-class African education, which enables and empowers Africans to be able to lead African brands in Africa and out to the world. To me, that's quite fundamental.
And then on my question, are we doing enough to get Africans fired up about gravitating towards African brands over global brands? Africans are fired up about going into those companies, but I guess the African companies like M10 invest a lot in training, as they've mentioned. But as Marie-Therese said, there is not enough companies. Many companies are just barely trying to make it, and not enough of them have got the budgets of the Coca-Colas, of the Google, etc., that they have to invest in research and development, that invest in training to be able to get the talent to that level. We've spoken a lot about some of the challenges when it comes to attracting the right talent. Ugo, let's come to you to get the solutions. What should African companies be doing to ensure that they have Africans at the forefront of their glocalization strategies?
Well, in as much as I agree that the government should relax some of the rules, I think there are loopholes in the system. So when some of these talents from wherever come to Nigeria, for example, I think there should be laid down procedures where there will be transfer of knowledge, because you can't always keep this talent from elsewhere. There should be transfer of knowledge at the end of the tenure. So I think that is one of the solutions. And whoever is coming should understand that they are coming to build, not stay forever. And that way, we will sustain some talent here.
And as we wrap up, let me get a quick comment from Marie-Therese on how African countries should be thinking about their branding and marketing strategies as they seek to have a successful glocalization strategy.
One thing they need to do is to know their customers. Know your customer. What are their tastes? Segment your market. Are you catering to the youths, or you're catering to the elderly, or you're catering to the middle class? You need to know your markets. You need to also define define your products in a way that would be durable and would suit the environment, the people that you are focused on. You also have to ensure that, take for example, Samsung today is in Nigeria, is in Africa. It has localized its products in a way that appeals to the people. Tiger Brands, when it came to Nigeria, it changed the taste of bread so that it would suit the Nigerian environment. So everything you need to do. What about you can also look at digital. How are you playing in the digital field? The likes of the online marketers, banks are the major people using the online medium. What are other people doing?
Yeah.
What are we doing with traditional mediums like televisions, print? What are we doing in that space? So these are some of the things that we need to look at in terms of ensuring that we get our products to the right people.
Tebe, the marketing landscape as you go global, if you do, what should you be thinking of to ensure that you avoid many of the pitfalls that Marie-Therese has just outlined?
Well, I think what Marie-Therese has just said is quite fundamental in terms of all great brands start with insights. If you don't have the insights, you shouldn't even bother getting into the plane. But I think the most important thing as Africans, what we really need to do is, we probably shouldn't be worrying about going global. We should be focusing on the African continent. Because if you look at the intra-Africa trade, it's only about 12% versus Europe, which is about 65 to 70%. If we increase intra-Africa trade by just 1%, we will generate $50 billion in income in Africa alone.
Is there demand, though? I mean, if I take, for example, the European Union example, and we look at the European Union's demand for citrus products from South Africa, is there sufficient demand coming from the African continent to supersede the demand that we see coming from Europe?
We've got great demand here. We've got 1 billion people. We've got rising, we've got dropping levels of poverty. We've got rising levels of income. If you look at high net worth individuals in Africa, they're growing at 9.9%, which is higher than us, second only to America, and above the global average of 9.5%. We've got wealthy people in Africa, but we also have people in Africa who want to eat, who want to sleep, who want to drink. And those products we can create here in Africa.
Well, that's all we have time for tonight. Thank you to my guests. That's Ugo Jerry Roberts, MD of Millward Brown, Nigeria, Marie-Therese Fido, Associate Director at KPMG Nigeria, and Tebe Kalafeng, the founder and chairman of Brand Africa. Please don't forget to send us your comments. The details are on screen. But for now, Bruce Whitfield is standing by to bring you Tonight with Bruce. From myself and the Invest Africa team, it's goodbye for now.